to you guys. Um, if you've learned anything from me or from anyone else, let's say your parents, right? Let's say you learned something from your parents, right? Or you learned something from someone that you sort of like have this distant, you know, respect for or relationship with, or some kind of thing, right? You sort of become accustomed to like receiving all these information from them, like all this knowledge and so on and so forth. So the expectation there is, well, if you learned a lot of things from your parents, let's say from your mom or your dad, the expectation there is, well, your mom and your dad are probably, especially when you're young, they're people who are very competent in what they do. So what do you do, like when your mom tells you something that, let's say, you either don't understand or you disagree with when you're a child? Like, what do you do? What's your first instinct, right? The instinct is always like, okay, like I don't get it, but my mom probably like says it, and I know my mom loves me, and I know that my mom wants sort of like to increase my competence. So what do you do? Like you start searching, at least like this is what most children do. They start searching, right, for meaning or depth and so on and so forth within the words or advice of the people they usually like learn from and respect. Now I'm not saying your mom is right all of the times, okay, but what I'm saying is your mom and your parents or any, let's say, figure that you respect on an intellectual and academic level, they should command a certain respect from you for like when you read something that they say and it immediately isn't made clear to you, like the truth of it, the depth of it, and so on and so forth. They should like command a little bit of respect in the sense of like, okay, like maybe I'm missing something here. Like maybe there's something here that I'm not understanding. But this is not how most people behave. And it's very strange to me, right? This is not how most adults behave. Why? Because they don't have the humbleness to do so. I always say that everyone deserves your love, but most people don't deserve your time. Nor do they deserve your respect. My biggest problem with people in who are like pursuing spirituality or think they're pursuing spirituality or whatever, and yes, this is a sort of a rant, but I do want to share this, um is that they always seem to have the sentiment behind them of like, okay, if I don't get it, if I'm unable to interface with this truth, if I'm unable to understand it, it must be false. That is like the most ego driven, um I don't know, like quote anyone can say, right? Like, yeah, like you don't get something that someone said, so you're so sort of like overwhelmed by your ego that you have to create like a simplified, dumbed down version of what was said so that you can feel better about yourself and be like, huh, like what they're saying isn't actually like something that's beyond my understanding. Something what they're saying is just like wrong or blah blah blah. Again, I'm not saying like if we're all human, we can all be wrong. I'm saying it's the approach that's really irritating. Like, why would I argue with you? Why would anyone take you seriously? Why would I give you my time, which I give you like just out of respect, out of like human respect? I think what you're saying is really dumb and really misinformed. r- Even if you think you're not, right? Like you think you're saying something that's smart, but I know, right, that what you're saying is really misinformed. Yet I'm still engaging with you out of love, right? And most people tend to take that as a weakness, right? Or if you like, if someone's like being offensive to you or whatever, or that they're like dumbing down your arguments or whatever, and they're calling you this and that name, when you don't actually call like swear back at them, they see it as a weakness. It's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever experienced, right? So the solution to that is, okay, I'm either not going to engage with you or I'm going to engage with you one time, right? Out of love and kindness and human respect. And I'm going to sort of like give you a direction or a hint and tell you, well, you know what? Like maybe like what you're saying actually is not that smart. Maybe you missed a lot of the points that I made in what I was saying, right? Maybe it's worth it if you go and sort of like reflect and analyze and then like let's say you can tell me, well, like I've spent some time like analyzing what you said and I still disagree. I still think it's wrong. Okay, great, amazing. That's far more respectful than saying, "Ha, you're wrong," because I don't immediately vibe with whatever you said. Why are you the metric for objective truth? Why are you the metric for you know I had this guy, and I completely ignored his post. I was happy I did. But I had this guy like a few days back. He was like, "I've been a Kabbalist for 15 years," and he was like, "Oh, like this doesn't mean that. This means this. So you've been a Kabbalist for 15 years, and you don't even hold the foremost basic understanding of how any sort of magic system works, right? So let's say you've been a Kabbalist for 15 years, but you don't understand that the human belief system is what drives any sort of ritualistic formulaic practice. So you've been a Kabbalist for 15 fucking years, and you don't understand the textbook basics, yet you have the audacity and the ego to go on someone else's page or whatever and just tell them like, oh, you actually don't know how this works. I've been doing this. You've been doing this for 15 years and you still suck at it. Like, understand that it's very different. Like, being humble, right, is not a weakness. And just understanding that sometimes you might not have the full picture is not a weakness. So when I say something like, oh, like, I think, like, if you and objectively that is true as well, right? When you look at, the Caucasian races or the European races or the white races and so on and so forth, when I say like, yeah, the white race is really good at like, artistic, creative inspiration. They can like intuit like really cool designs and like this knowledge and like innovation and like technology and creating new concepts out of thin air, right? Why do you guys think like that upsets some people? It upsets them because like uh, they just like want to disagree with it so badly. Like, if you're still stuck in a mind state or a headspace where um just confessing to yourself like something that's so objectively true and something that's so like objectively like out there where you can just like see it, like observe it, and just it serves as its own proof. If you're still like in that mind state where you have to like get out of your way and play like mental gymnastics to convince yourself of something else being true, I will tell you what you're doing with yourself. Okay, firstly, a person who doesn't care about objective truth doesn't care about anything. Like, if you don't care about truth or pursuing the truth, then you are not in pursuit of that which is, well, pure. You're in pursuit of something that serves you and is like self-serving or serves your community or your country or whatever. Is that an admirable quality? A lot of people will tell you it is, but I don't think it is. I think that's a very low IQ quality, right? um Now, if you do care about the truth, the only reason you would argue or debate with someone, right, is because you want to find out more of the truth, right? So if I engage with someone, let's say if I engage with you, I'm pulling myself down to, your level, or the level of the conversation, whatever fundamental level of engagement, whatever arena you present to me. And again, I don't have to do it. I'm doing out of love, so that our debate or our argument maybe can like reach a point where both you and I end up learning something new, right? But people tend to see that as an attack on their persona, right? Like, oh, like, how dare you say this and how dare you? Well, if I say something, right, and you've learned something from me in the past, let's say this way you're following my account, obviously, because you've learned something in the past from me. You've sort of like understood something. Maybe, right? Maybe I don't just say something to say something. Maybe the most shallow psychological or behavioral explanation as to why I would be saying something is not the most true, right? Maybe there's a little bit more depth to what is being said, right? Maybe there's a little bit more research into that's gone into what's being said than you think. So this is, from my experience, the most irritating thing about people, right? One is the sentiment that, oh, I don't understand it, so it must be false because I can never be wrong, and I have to immediately grasp every single concept that's presented to me. And if it's not vibing with me, with my limited intellectual whatever, like with my limited intellect, then yeah, it must be false and it must be untrue. And the second one, how everyone like devolves into like personal attacks and blah blah. Like, I don't care. I'm not gonna go out there and like literally like argue with you. Like, you're gonna call me an idiot, and then I'm gonna call you this, and you're gonna call me that. What are we, like babies? Are we like 15 years old? I don't care. You can call me like whatever name you want. It's not going to change the truth, and it's not going to benefit you, and it's not going to benefit me. Like, um, just understand that. Like, when someone calls me something like rude, I don't I don't reply to them, but I don't do it because like I don't feel like doing it. Sometimes I do. I don't do it because like, you know, I don't. think bad things about, like, in that very moment. If someone, like, like, tells me something rude or really mean or abusive or whatever, like, of course, like, I get irritated. Who wouldn't? But I don't engage or interact with them at all, and they seem to feel like, oh, like, it's a sign of weakness, like, oh, like, he gave up on the argument, he ran away from the argument, blah blah. We can debate, but I'm not going to engage in behavior. And why I'm doing this space is I'm urging everyone else, sort of like trying to get into real, like, true spirituality for the sake of self growth, to teach yourself to not engage with people who are just not even looking for the truth. Like, they're just looking to argue. They're just looking to sort of like undermine you, which is fine. Like, in a debate, it's fine if we try to undermine one another. Like, it's like a chess game, but it's not even a debate. Like, the debate isn't happening, right? So when the argument becomes about just avoiding the debate, so the debate and argument are two different things. Where the argument is about for the sake of arguing and to avoid the debate that's potentially going to lead us to the truth, then that's a problem. And usually happens from people who know what the truth is deep down, and they know that the truth, like, if unveiled by the debate, it's going to work against what they stand for, right? So they just, they would rather just sabotage the whole thing, and use, like, mental gymnastics, and then project, like, oh, you're using mental gymnastics to do blah 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 blah. There's really not much, like, when you look at human behavior, right? There's really not much a person can do to another in the manipulative sense if the other person doesn't allow it, right? So if you, I don't know, like, if you're telling me that, oh, you're doing this and this trick to achieve this and this goal, right? um and then we start about, you know I don't know, talking about, like, different, like, behavioral techniques or whatever, or different, like, manipulative techniques, blah blah blah. They've succeeded, right? Because they've rediverted the conversation from, something, like, that pursued truth, to, like, this very specific niche thing. And then you'll discuss semantics, and then you'll discuss, like, what does it mean to you, what means this to me, it means that to him, and it could be blah blah. How every argument devolves to, like, every argument devolves to this thing, where it becomes about semantics, and it becomes about, like, what did you mean by this, and what did I. Everyone knows what every person in the argument meant with whatever, whatever. There's always one person in the argument who's in pursuit of truth, and there's always another person in the argument who's in pursuit of trying to, like, sabotage the process, right? um but it's your fault, right? If you engage with people like this, it's your fault. If someone, like, calls you an idiot, obviously it doesn't feel good. Obviously, like, most people who are, like, not inclined to dig deeper into the situation, honestly, like, of course they will think that, like, oh, you probably, like, don't have an answer, that's where but you have to come out of, like, the perspective of, like, okay, like, how is this serving me? Like, is it actually serving me to be arguing with some random person about some random thing that I don't even care about, right? um it's a big lesson. Like, it's a simple thing, but there's a very big lesson in this. um like, especially when people, like, come at you, right? And sometimes when people will come at me, like, in the comments, like, oh, like, you don't know this, you haven't done that's a, like, mental manipulation tactic as well, right? When they tell you something like, yo, Jack of Faces, like, with someone who's so learned, is, I'm surprised that you don't know this, I'm surprised that you're unaware of the duh, 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 duh." Shut up, right? Like, that is, like, baby level. Like, I've worked in prisons. I've worked with, like, all kinds of people who are master manipulators compared to you. You're not going to use, like, a baby level manipulation tactic with me, and it's just unimpressive. It's just not impressive at all, right? Like, people genuinely think that, like, stuff that, like, works with their, like, younger siblings, like, it's gonna work with, like, every other person, right? They just default to those to those techniques and behaviors. So please, like, for the love of everything, good and beautiful, like, uh don't say, I don't understand it, so it must be false. Like, for the love of God, like, before you decide to have a strong opinion on something, whenever you do read a strong opinion, just really try to dive into the person's intentions, who was writing the argument, like just to try to dive into like, huh, maybe there's more to this. Why would this person be saying this? Like, like I know they put a lot of thought into like the things they say, right? Like, why would they be saying this? Like, don't be that person who uses themselves and their own current intellectual capacity to reference whether something is true or not, or whether something is correct or not, right? And then devolve the argument into like this weird, I don't even know what it's called, like where you're like, well, what statistics and what data, my friend? You're in a place of the abstract. You're in a place of mysticism and like a conspiracy, and like, what data do you want to be presented? You should already have the data. If you're so good at what you do, okay? If you're so good in the spiritual field, you should already have all the data. You should already have all the proof. And more importantly, you shouldn't need to argue with anyone about anything online. If you already know the truth, why are you arguing with me about it? Right? So it's like this ridiculousness where um people have this incredibly fragile ego, and they have this incredibly fragile agenda that they just can't get over. Mm. Please don't be that person. Like, be the outlier. Like, be the person who says, "Well, when I read something that like is like, well, okay, like what does this person like actually mean by this?" Or are they just, if someone's just saying, like a ridiculous thing, like, I don't know, like, all women are disgusting. Yeah, am I going to sit there and think like, well, there's probably some larger depth as to why they're saying it? Of course not. Of course not. So when something is an emotionally charged message, the message becomes unserious. So you don't have to read into any of it. You don't have to read into like, well, why is this person saying this? Because no person who is aligned with their emotional and spiritual self would ever come out and say things like that in that manner, right? Like, we all know, regardless of how convincing or charismatic you are, that all women are not disgusting. Like, it's literally un like unfathomable, eh, to say something like that, or like it's immediately disproved by just looking out of your window. Like, it's immediately disprovable. So of course I'm not going to read deep into it. I'm going to be like, well, okay, I guess this person is so emotionally engaged and so emotionally overwhelmed by their own, I don't know, insecurities or hatred or whatever, that they come out and say it like, oh, whatever, right? There are things that people say like that that piss me off too. um but if it's like, um if the message isn't emotionally charged, right? But it brings out some sort of negative emotion within you, that's not my problem. That's your problem. You should study better. You should educate yourself. You should read more into it. If something I say pisses you off, that's a you problem, right? But only in the case if I'm saying something that's not emotionally charged in the first place, right? So if I come and tell you that you're a terrible person, da da da, of course that should, you know, anger you to a certain degree, right? Because like, well, why are you saying this, right? If I come to you and I don't know, like let's say you're someone who's like a big believer, right? And if I offend your religion, I'm like, oh, like, you're so stupid for following this or that religion. Of course, I'm going to say this person is an idiot, right? This person has no basic respect for anyone's beliefs. This person is a degenerate, right? But if you're reading something that doesn't have like that negative connotation, or doesn't have that emotionally charged language that's used in it, man, just like read into it a little bit. People have really low standards. Like, people have really low standards for themselves, in the sense of like, um you won't double triple check anything if you've made up your mind about it. And that's a dangerous place to be in. It's a dangerous person to be, because you're so compartmentalized into what you want to be true and what you want to believe, that you've abandoned like common sense, right? And then it just becomes about like, okay, like whether like something vibes with what I want to believe and what I want to be true, and if it doesn't vibe with it, I just don't want it. No, 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 no. Why are you in the spiritual space? Why are you trying to spiritually grow? Isn't the idea and the concept of spiritual growth to make you a better person? Like that is the fundamental reason why spirituality as a thing is pursued in the first place. Now we can talk about different interpretations of spirituality, right? We can talk about like what ways there are of achieving said spirituality. But if the end result of your spiritual journey is that you've become an obnoxious a-hole, right? Then you haven't gone that very far, right? You haven't gone that far at all. So if I see like a interesting concept and I disagree with it, my first reaction to it is not like, oh, I don't not agree with it or I don't understand it, so it must be not true. My first response is like, hmm, okay, let's see who said it. Okay, this person said it. This person, you know, you know, relatively, you know, smart in the past. Okay, let's read into like why they might be saying it. As simple as that. If I still come to the same conclusion, right, after I've done my research and blah, 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 sure, no problem. I can just tell them, you know, man, like I disagree with you. But there's even like culture to the disagreement or the culture of debate. There's like an honor to it, right? So if I disagree with you, right, there's ways that I can word that that isn't offensive, right? Like being offensive it doesn't mean being strong. It means just being an a-hole. And it makes the other person less likely to engage with you and makes the other person less likely to respect. I can't believe I have to teach this like to adults. Like I can't believe I have to teach this to people from the first world, from first world countries who have gone through like the basic education and schooling system, where they have no idea how to communicate with people um, and showcase respect. I literally can't believe it. Like the bar is so low. Like the bar for self behavior and self respect is so low for these people that it's like just unbelievable to think that they've been born into civilized society and this is how they behave. It's like man childs. Like it's like men, like children in the bodies of men and women. Some of them, unfortunately, right? But yeah, here we are. Like this is where we are, right? Where people have to be taught basic matters and like how to communicate with other people without dehumanizing them and showing respect. Even if you disagree with what I say, I'm not saying, oh, whatever I say is true. It's probably not, right? But there are ways to showcase that you disagree with someone. There are like ways to showcase that, maybe like you missed this and missed that, blah blah blah. So yeah, make it a rant, this one, and make it a short one, but for the love of God, like please, like have some standards for yourself, right? Like don't be that person, right? Just, like humble yourself a little bit. When someone doesn't engage with you and doesn't embarrass you in your replies, which I can do, I can dismantle these people with arguments and like references and da 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 because I've been doing this for a very long time. I have a lot of ammunition, right? Um, And if even if I don't, I'll confess to you guys, even if I don't have a lot of ammunition, like I know human behavior very well, and I know how to manipulate people very well. So even if I had no ammunition, I could still probably embarrass you. I could like attack your persona and really embarrass you too, just like you're doing mine or whatever, but I choose not to. I never choose to do that. I'm not going to do that. Like if someone like comes at me and like they call me like, oh, like you're so dumb and you're well, whatever whatever. And if I go on their profile and I see like let's say their physiognomy, not even their physiognomy, their physiology, and if there's something wrong with their body, right, or what, all of these, like everyone has a weakness, a big weakness that they are not aware of. I could go out and make fun of them for it. I could make their lives miserable for it, right? I can like really make them insecure about it, right? But I don't because I choose not to. And I think it's because it's wrong, right? I don't think you should choose to do that as well. But like it takes it takes strength of mind to respect that, to understand that. Like like, this is an ego thing too. Like like if I attack someone and they don't attack me back, right? If I'm trying to destroy someone's credibility, and if they're not destroying my credibility, right? The ego wants to think of it as a weakness. It wants to think of that, because if it doesn't think of it as a weakness, then they immediately have to admit to themselves that the other person is probably stronger than they are, right? Like they have better convictions and so on and so forth. Mm. The first lesson of anything, right? The first lesson of anything is, if you attack someone, great. If you want to, like, if you want to, like, debate about it or whatever, whatever. If you want to call out someone about their idiots, just make sure it actually is idiocy that you're calling out, right? And especially if they don't, like, engage back with you, it's out of, like, respect, like human respect, and out of mercy, really, for the most part, and not out of some sort of like, oh, like, yeah, of course you don't have any arguments and that's why you're not replying. Okay, if that helps you sleep at night, right? I know how stupid you are, right? From my perspective, as someone who's learned in a subject, I know, I can see how stupid you are, like in an objective academic sense, right? I can see how stupid. I know how small your argument can be if we want to pursue that, right? You don't know how stupid you are. And your incessant sort of like, I don't even know, like, desire to pursue that direction is just like strange to me, right? Your like incessant belief that there's no way in the world that you could ever be wrong or misinformed or incompetent about a certain thing is making you so weak and so easily exploitable and so vulnerable to psychological abuse, right? I don't know what to tell you, right? So please think on that. Like, there are people out there, I 100% agree. When they say something stupid, you can just be like, you know, what you're saying is stupid. You're an idiot. You're a degenerate, right? But then there are people who are explaining certain concepts, most likely a sophisticated, complex concepts, so on and so forth, in a respectful manner that's not emotionally charged. They're, like, presented in a respectable, tasteful way, right? Think on that. They think on what the difference between those two things are. You should know this. Like, if you had like elementary education, you should be equipped with the mental clarity and the know-how to distinguish between these two things.